Welcome to Snail Trail 4x4. Today we are making this 2018 TRD Off-Road 4Runner, a badass off-roader. We are going to be installing some King shocks all the way around. They're about 2.5 to 3 inches, and we got the whole kit from Filthy Motorsports.
I'm running out of time, every day goes by so fast.
So we just put the truck up on jack stands, we took the tires off, and we have it all supported nice and safe. Now the next step here is we are going to be disconnecting the upper control arm and the spindle. And to do that, we have to undo this cotter pin right here and loosen the castle nut. Then we're going to try to separate these two so that they kind of bounce out and the castle nut will stop it. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So let's take this guy off. So this one was just a little spring and it was under tension. So you pop this guy out and push it away, and then you can pull the whole cotter pin out. All right, we're just gonna lower that down a little bit right there. So I got maybe 1/4 of an inch. So now we're gonna give it a few taps with a hammer right here so that these guys can separate. Boom. All right, did you see how it dropped down right there and it landed onto this castle nut and stopped? That's exactly what we wanted. If you don't have the castle nut there, this would bounce all the way down and it's just dangerous. So leave that castle nut on there. Now we can unthread the castle nut and control everything as it comes down. We are going to support the spindle on the underside with a jack stand or a jack so that it just doesn't droop all the way. I'm just undoing these brackets right here, this is your ABS line and holds your brake line. That's a 12 millimeter, and it's got a little like hook on it. So we'll just pull that out. I'm also going to undo the ABS line up here on the control arm because we are going to be replacing those. Okay, now our next step is we're actually going to be removing this upper control arm. I'm going to pop some of these plastic rivets out to get more access back here, and then we're going to be undoing the pivot bolt for your upper control arm. It's sort of a pain in the butt, and we actually have to feed it through the entire engine bay to get it out. So right here is a 12 millimeter bolt that holds the hard line for the brake lines, and it's just on this bracket. But we're gonna remove that bolt in the frame so we can get better access to this pivot nut. All right, so what we're doing, these are both 19 millimeters. We got a 19 millimeter box end on this side, kind of just to hold things still, and I've got the 19 millimeter over here on the nut, on the pivot bolt nut. We're just loosening those up. Remember the order that you take this apart because we're going to be putting it right back together in more or less the same order. So we got this nut on this side and we got this big old washer. Now we're going to pop the hood and go underneath. This is definitely when you need a friend to help you out. So I'm going to push this nut or this big long bolt up. Brian, what you got to do here is this washer actually has to stay down against this lower control arm. So let the washer go. All right, so now let's see if you can pull that bolt out. Yep, good. All right, we're almost there. I'm staying underneath here to hold the control arm and catch this bolt as it comes out. Almost there. There we go. All right. Upper control arm is out. Struggling with bolt still. You got it? Now we're gonna remove the lower nut for the strut here. And this is a 19 millimeter. We're just gonna break it loose. We'll leave that as is right now, just pulling those nuts off. And then on the top side, we're gonna undo those. Those are 14 millimeters. I find that these gear wrenches work great for that because there's not a lot of room up there. Because that bottom bolt's still in there and it's holding it in place, we can actually finger tighten these or take these guys off. And because the whole spring and everything's pressing up, there's a lot less stress on these. All right, so what we're doing here is we're actually putting a piece of wood between the lower control arm and this is your bump stop. And we're gonna be pushing down on the lower control arm to lower it down, and that will free up your bolt. And then we're gonna have to go down far enough that we can actually pull these top bolts out and out of the way, and that will remove our strut. So let's see if we got enough power. Ready? All right, and that pulls that out. A little bit more. Okay, free. Oh, keep going. Okay, totally free. Relax. There we go. And the strut is out. Voila. You want it? Okay, now we're doing the same thing, but in the opposite direction, and we're installing the new coils from King. One thing I want to point out here, if you lean back a little bit, is this is where the reservoir goes. So the reservoir is going to be poking forward, and it has an elbow that's poking towards the front of the vehicle because we're going to mount the reservoir in the front. So these will be directional, so you need to make sure that you're going to drive or grab the correct one for driver or passenger. All right, let's try it. Okay, how much more do we need to go down? A lot?
It's in.
Is it? Yep. All right, well, okay, relax.
Put the bolt in.
Yep, sweet. All right, so what we did up here is we actually put the bolts in here at the top. They provide you with these 3/8 1-inch bolts with a washer. So we screwed those in just to kind of hold it in place and to hold it up. So while we're pushing down on this lower control arm, we're gonna be able to thread that bolt in, or at least that's the thought.
Right there.
Got it?
Yeah.
Are we through all the way?
Yeah.
There we go.
Good to go.
Sweet. All right. Now the nut and the washer are right underneath you. You can thread those on. We're gonna torque these guys down. They're 47 foot-pounds. It's really quite low. There we go. There's one. That one in the back we're not gonna be able to get. There's just not enough room, so we'll just feel how tight one is and try to match the other one. There we go. So we're gonna tighten the lower bolt now. We go up to 70 foot-pounds. So we're just gonna tighten this guy along. Watch the other side of this bolt. Make sure it's not spinning. So we're torquing down some things on the other side, and I just straight up whacked my face with my torque wrench, and it split my eyebrow a little bit. So I'm gonna be wearing a Band-Aid for the rest of this video. We're working on the upper control arm on the driver's side. We got some SPC upper control arms. These are actually really cool because they're adjustable for camber and caster, and you, depending on the size of lift that you get, you can adjust the way that the ball joint is going to sit inside of the upper control arm. We are doing a 3-inch lift on the front here, so we are going to be using figure D on their sheet. We're going to be using figure D on their sheet, which is supposed to give us the OEM ride height for the vehicle with a 3-inch lift. This comes with the spec sheet, or with the upper control arm, so when you buy this kit, you get this whole entire paper as well. The way that it works is it has this like big washer that has these star cuts out, and then the hex is on here. So if you can adjust how to put this onto the top part, and then when you put it onto the upper control arm, it will change the rotation and some of the camber and caster of the ball joint. So it's actually really cool. So we're gonna set this up in position D, and we're gonna install it right now. Inside the upper control arm, they have their own bushings, and it's all sealed and everything's protected. So they provide you with new washers as well. The washer is sort of concave and has a bump out, and you actually put the bump on the inside or on the outside so that there's a gap between it. That's the way that they want you to put it together. So I'm gonna hold this up into place, and we're gonna run the bolt through right now. Good, good. Keep coming all the way through. All right, good, keep going. I think I got it. All right, keep a little bit more. There we are, perfect. Cool, and then on the back side of this bolt, we're gonna put that concave section against the bushings as well, and then we're gonna put the old OEM nut back on. So I messed up right here, and I want to point this out, that actually the brake line needs to come on the top side of the upper control arm, so we're gonna have to pull the bolt out and realign this whole thing. Now we're gonna torque this down to factory spec, and you can tighten these down to factory spec right now, because OEM way to do this is you actually drop the vehicle down and have it resting, but because they have their own gusset or their own X-axis bushings on the inside of here, we can torque it down right now. So the torque is 85 foot-pounds. All right, the next step here is we're actually gonna move this knuckle in place, and we're gonna push these guys together, and we're gonna put in the castle nut. Before you tighten everything together, we're gonna make sure that there's a big oblong oval kind of here, and we want that to sit roughly in the middle of the opening. We're gonna hold that there in the middle, and we're just gonna tighten this up a little bit so it stays in place. We're gonna fully tighten that in a little bit. Tightening this castle nut up to 45 foot-pounds. And then what we need to do is we need to look for where the hole is. So the hole's right here and it's halfway covered. And so we need to tighten it up just a little bit more. Then we slide the cotter pin through. I actually overdid it with that last little turn. Now is a great time to replace all these brackets that we have pulled off, and on top and bottom everywhere. We'll start right here. That guy back in. This guy back over the top. It's a little stretched right now. This. You back on. Now we can grease this ball joint back up. Just slide your grease gun over the top. We're gonna give it 5 solid pumps, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they suggest 5 to 10 pumps. And so I'm gonna do another 5 more, but I'm gonna watch and see if there's any more grease, any grease coming out, which means it's full. 3, 4, 5. All right, so that's 10 pumps right there, which is what they suggest. And I didn't see any grease pop out, so that means that's where I'm stopping. So otherwise, if you see grease popping out, that's when you should stop. So now we're attaching the bracket for the reservoirs. These guys were a little awkward to figure out the position, but the way that we found it out is the front of the bracket lines up right here on the cross member hole. So that was the easy way to figure it out. This one has only one threaded hole here. There's 2 holes. So we can just simply thread that one in. Unless you got a lot of dirt or grime and stuff in there. Got it. And then the other one lines up on the frame. And so this one's going to be a little awkward just because there's that body mount or that plastic sheath. But this longer bolt here goes all the way through your frame, and you have to put the nut that they provide you on the back side. So there we are. So I got a washer in the bolt there. This sucks. You have to reach all the way around the KDSS to get it in, but I got it. So we got a nut on the back side and then the bolt all the way through. These are 5/8, so we're gonna tighten those up now. This guy right here is a 3/4 inch bolt, so we're just gonna tighten that guy up. They didn't give us any torque specs for any of these, so we're just snugging them up to the frame. They supply you with these pretty big hose clamps, and we're just going to orientate them so that we can get some easy access in them. Also, there's some cutouts in the brackets that are exactly made for both of these. So just make sure that you're threading everything through the right way. Let's see, so we need to go around here and then up and around so that we can line everything up. We'll just hold the reservoir up into place and then lightly screw these guys into place to hold it. And then we'll do some fine tuning adjustments here in a little bit. All right, last little step here is to put these mud flaps back into place. So we're just gonna push all the black tabs through. Now is a good time to double check all your bolts. Make sure that you torqued everything properly, pushed everything back together. The cotter pin is sitting great. And our last step right now is we have to torque down this big bolt to 150 foot-pounds. All right, so we're moving on to the rear now. We've pulled the tire off. We also are supporting it underneath the frame, so we're getting full droop on the axle. This is gonna give us the most room and allow us to pull the springs out fairly easy. Step 1 for us is to undo the shocks. We're gonna do this top part first, then pop off what's on the bottom, and hopefully we can slide it right out. We're in here to disconnect the top of the shock. These things are always a pain in the butt. I like to use vice grips, but right now it's aligned, so I can't actually get the vice grip in there. So you can actually somewhat turn the shock, the head of that shock, to where you need it by just sort of twisting the nut around. And then we can put the vice grip up there at the top, which I'm still too loose. And then, my hand's totally in the way, but I need to push these in opposite directions. So let's, here we go. There it goes, broke loose. You're gonna have to keep that vice grip up there at the top because it'll still want to spin. This is the hardest part right here about taking off the rear end. Hopefully King has a better system. Now that it's fairly loose and vice grips are off, we can see that this section's staying the same, not moving at all, and we can actually loosen this all the way up. Take this nut off. This happens to be a 17 millimeter, same size as the bolt on the bottom side. On the bottom right here is a 17 millimeter also, so we're just gonna pop that guy loose. Pull this guy off. Take that guy out of there. We just took off the bump stops that were right in this area. They were a 12 millimeter bolt that went up and through, 2 of them. This kit comes with a bracket that mounts right up here for your reservoir up on the top. It also comes with a spacer for your bump stops. Since you're doing a lift, they are lowering down your bump stops. This spacer is from Toy Tech. Make sure the rounded corner is facing the front of the vehicle. On the bottom of the spacer, you can just put the long bolts through and through the bracket, and then you can thread it up into the frame. These are a 5 millimeter Allen head. Just tighten these guys up right here. So my trick here for getting the axle down so you can pull these springs up is a bottle jack. The bottle jack will help us push the axle away from the frame and give us room to pull out those springs. Because this is a nice pretty piece of aluminum, I'm just gonna put a piece of towel in there, so I'm not really scuffing it too much. Make sure the bottle jack's centered on that axle and you're not on any of the lines. There is an ABS line that runs right there. So now we're just gonna tighten this up and go down with the axle until we can have some free springs. And then we're gonna have to go down some more to put the new springs in. And that spring is out. Ooh, my wrist. Thanks. Here we have the new springs. The bottom side of the spring right here is called the pigtail. The pigtail goes into a little sleeve on your axle. You notice where it sits, there's a small section that actually goes down that accommodates for this pigtail. The top, you know, is flat. That's where it's gonna be pressing up against your body. And you're gonna put the top hat in facing down. This is kind of another bump stop or a compression bump of some sort. So now we're gonna have to probably push the axle further down so we can fit these new springs in. Here's the new spring, and here's the old spring. You can see that that's another rung or almost 1.5 rungs farther down. So we're gonna have to push this axle a little bit farther down so we can accommodate for this dusty, dirty top hat to fit underneath there. We did disconnect the ABS line because it was getting pretty tight, so we took that apart just to give us some more flex here. All right, here we go, 3rd time trying. We had to adjust the spring tighteners and the lower, everything a bunch, but we are getting close. There we go, we're in. All right, woo! All right. Let's release this guy first. Making sure the pigtail's in its groove, which it feels like it is right there. All right, so we got both sides on. Springs are in place, top hats, everything beautiful, nice and all installed. Great. One of the things that we did while we were under here is we installed the extended brake lines. And I have a whole video of that, so I'll put that up in a card right up here if you want to see how to do extended brake lines. Now I'm going to install the bump stops, and then we're going to install the shock, and then the back is going to be done. These are 1/2-inch drive bolts, and they gave us new hardware, so we're just putting all that in. There is a lock washer and a regular washer on here, so we'll just thread those up and tighten them up. So the shock comes with this bushing for the top section. It just has this actual steel sleeve through there. And then I pulled these apart. This is gonna go on the top, then a blue, the anodized blue section, then a washer, and then our nut, which is actually on this side, and then the nut. There is no room up here. And actually King suggests that you cut a section of this away, the body lip here, so that you get better access. We're not going to be doing that, and that's what we're choosing to do. But if anybody wants to speed this process up, you can definitely cut that away. Also, one thing we should point out is the shock reservoir that comes out of here goes forward at first, but then swings back, and that's how you know which direction they are. So now we are just going to put these up top, go bushing. Go anodized top hat, go washer, and as still as possible. There we go. So using the ratchet strap all the way around the bottom of the shock and back up the other side, I was able to suck it up and get the good alignment onto this, the housing or the male end on the axle housing. And now we can just suck that up and slide it in there and slide the bolt in, and the shock is on. We're going to tighten this lower bolt here to 72 foot-pounds. Last step here is just to mount these reservoirs right in the top with the brackets that they provide with the hose clamps, and then the rear is all finished. Super happy with the outcome of this install. These Kings look rad underneath this silver 4Runner, and the reservoirs just add that extra bit of shine that looks great. Everything went together very, very easily. The install took us a few hours to do, and we are super happy with the outcome. If you like this video, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button over there. And don't forget, my friends, keep crawling.